till the midnight sky, burning high. Under blazing skies, we won't fall. In the electric neon night, we stand tall.
Blue flag, blue flag.
Hello and welcome back to Blue Flag Bandits, the series that drives F1's worst cars since 2010, so you don't have to in the desperate hunt for points. And you find us here at the start of our 2015 season in Australia, driving the McLaren Honda MP4-30. Yes, it's the probably one-off season driving for McLaren, and it's a bit of a meme, this car, primarily because of Fernando Alonso and some of the things that he said about it. But it was McLaren's worst season for 35 years. They only finished ahead of a hastily resubmitted or re-entered Mana Marussia team. And this engine was woeful in the back of the McLaren. It was due to be the big, wonderful rejoining of an iconic partnership from the 1980s, and it turned into a little bit of a farce. The 10-year deal was cut to 3, Honda moved to Red Bull, and became good again, while McLaren had to go through a couple of Renault years before heading back to Mercedes, and at the time of recording, early 2026, quite a distance before we get into the new season, they're now two-time Constructors' Champions and have a driver's title under their belt. But back in 2015, it was a very different story. They had two world champion drivers, Fernando Alonso moving from Ferrari after being replaced by Sebastian Vettel, who moved to Ferrari from Red Bull, and Jenson Button, who'd been at the team since 2010, 3 titles between them. And you may also notice that both drivers are listed there, and there's a reason for that. You can go back to the intro video and find that out. But in simple terms, F1 2015 is a game, a bit of a weird one. There is no career mode, which means there's also no manual driver entry. You have to do championship season and pick an existing driver to be. So we've chosen JB. Normally we'd look at the stand-ins, but let's take a look quickly at the grid for 2015, because it is going to be a bit different. We lost Caterham at the end of 2014, and we drove that car to the very end, and it took till the bitter end to score points. So we're actually coming into this race off the back of a point-scoring finish, one of only 2 in the last 2 seasons. Lewis Hamilton took the title for Mercedes and is still at Mercedes with Nico Rosberg in 2015. Daniel Ricciardo and Daniel Kvyat at Red Bull. Ricciardo retaining his spot, Kvyat moving up from Toro Rosso after Vettel left. Massa and Bottas are still at Williams. Vettel moved to Ferrari to partner Kimi Raikkonen, meaning Fernando Alonso moved to McLaren to partner Jenson Button. Although, wait for the chatter about the real world race to see what happened to Alonso. Nico Hülkenberg and Sergio Perez remain at Force India. There's some kid called Max Verstappen at Toro Rosso. Don't really know what happened to him. Alongside Carlos Sainz Jr., the son of the rally legend. They're the Toro Rosso pairing for this season in an all-new driver lineup. Lotus retained Grosjean and Maldonado. Marcus Ericsson left Caterham and moved to Sauber alongside Felipe Nasr, but once again, maybe a few things to listen out for in the build-up to this race while we're doing practice. And Will the Lad Stevens and Roberto Merri moved into the Mana Marussia seats, which were vacated by Max Chilton, who moved to IndyCar, and obviously Jules Bianchi, who hadn't driven since his fatal accident in Japan the year previous. So it's another season where we are battling, realistically, according to the real world standings anyway, Sauber and Mana Marussia. Only 20 cars on the grid, as I say. Caterham dropped out of the sport at the end of 2014, and we had quite the season driving for them. If the practice race for this one, or the pre-season race at Spain, is anything to go by, we might actually have a decent crack at getting good points in 2015, just because we might not be, no, we shouldn't be, I don't think, as hamstrung by engine penalties and engine issues as we were, or as the real world McLaren Honda were. Again, mentioned it in the pre-season race, but 305 place grid drops over the course of the season, 105 between the pair of drivers in Belgium. Doesn't quite be simulating like that. Let's go with that. In game, especially of course because it is just a championship mode rather than a career mode, so there's no like engine management or parts management, especially the kind of things you see in the later entries of the F1 series by Codemasters. So we might not be as hamstrung by engine issues, but this car's still not the fastest. I think then what we really need to do is get out there, get some practice in, and see how this stacks up in championship mode, because that always also throws a little bit of a curveball in terms of pace, because it looked like we were going to have an alright season last season in the pre-season race and spent all of it draining, essentially, in that green machine from Norfolk. But while we do, we'll talk about the real world 2015 Australian Grand Prix. The opening round of the 2015 season was held in the familiar surroundings of Melbourne's Albert Park, and before the season had even begun, there was controversy at Sauber. During the off-season, Sauber announced Marcus Ericsson and Felipe Nasr as their drivers for the 2015 season, the latter bringing in substantial sponsorship money for the Swiss outfit. However, former Caterham driver Guido van der Garde claimed he had signed an agreement in 2014 for a race seat, a claim upheld by a Swiss court. As the team arrived in Australia, they maintained that Nasr and Ericsson would drive, so an appeal was lodged with the Supreme Court of Victoria. The Supreme Court also upheld the claim and stated that van der Garde should drive. Sauber argued that it would be dangerous to alter the chassis at such short notice and agreed to terminate the contract after losing their appeal, paying substantial damages to van der Garde, effectively ending his F1 career. McLaren also arrived with a driver quandary after Fernando Alonso was injured in an accident in pre-season testing, one which is still a mystery to this day, meaning that Kevin Magnussen would drive in his place. The opening practice session followed the chaos of the build-up, with both Sauber and Manor not participating. Sauber as they were effectively grounded, pending the court appeal, and Manor as they stated it was effectively their first day of testing after their late rescue from liquidation. Essentially most of the computers had been wiped prior to a liquidation sale, and they couldn't get the data back before setting the cars out. Mercedes and Williams would pick up from where they left off in 2014 now. Rosberg quickest ahead of Hamilton and Bottas. The second practice session also only saw 16 cars participate, Manor remaining in their garage, though Sauber did get on track with Massa and Ricciardo having to sit out this session. Once again, Mercedes would top the times, Rosberg once again leading Hamilton, but it'd be Vettel following behind him third in his Ferrari. The final practice session would see 18 cars take to the track, with Manor still remaining in their garage. It'd be Mercedes atop the timing charts again, though it would be Hamilton leading the way with Rosberg in third, the German complaining of a gear shift problem, while Vettel would split the pair in his red car. Qualifying would once again only have 18 cars on track, as Manor was still unable to run, meaning only 3 elimination spots for those on track, and Manor would not actually partake in the race whatsoever. Kvyat found himself at risk late on until an improvement saw him drop both McLaren's and Marcus Ericsson out in Q1, compounding an already tough start to the season for the renewed McLaren-Honda partnership. Kvyat continued to struggle in Q2, unable to guide his Red Bull into the top 10 shootout on his debut at the A-Team. He'd be joined in the drop zone by rookie Max Verstappen, who made a mistake on his final run, both Force Indias, and Felipe Nasr, the Brazilian just missing out on the top 10 after limited running throughout the weekend. Much like the previous season, the Silver Arrows would dominate, even after Rosberg made a mistake on his opening run. Hamilton would be the Mercedes to take pole position with Rosberg in behind. Massa would line up third in the Williams ahead of the two Ferraris, Bottas, Ricciardo, Sainz, Grosjean and Maldonado. Limited field was whittled down before the race even began, fell through Bottas being ruled out after injuring his back in qualifying, before both Magnussen and Kvyat didn't make it to the grid, the Dane's Honda engine dying while the Russian's gearbox gave it the ghost. That meant that only 15 cars took the start of the season opener, and it wouldn't be long before that number dropped even further. Raikkonen got a better start than his new teammate Vettel, but the German ushered the other Ferrari wide. That would send the Finn's car into empty stall as he was hit by the Toro Rosso of Sainz, the rookie losing the left end plate of his front wing. Nasr attempted to make gains from the instant ahead of him when past Maldonado arrived on the scene. The pair collided and the Lotus was sent into the barriers and out of the race. The resultant clean-up required the safety car, which also claimed the other Lotus of Grosjean due to issues with his Mercedes power unit. Hamilton would nail the restart under no threat from Rosberg behind while others struggled. Sainz lost 2 spots to Nasr and Ricciardo before losing another to Raikkonen 3 laps later. But that would be about as good as it got for Kimi. His left rear wheel nut became cross-threaded at his first pit stop, which cost him time, with the wheel nut failing to reattach at his second stop, the car being sent out and immediately being told to park. At the front, Hamilton only had a minor concern about his fuel consumption, with Rosberg attempting to find out what state his teammate was in, only to be balked by the FIA's radio alerts. Hamilton would cruise to victory ahead of Rosberg and Vettel, with only Massa and Nasr ending on the lead lap. It would just be 11 cars reaching the finish, as Verstappen's Renault engine would expire just before the end, meaning only one car, that of Jenson Button's McLaren, would be outside of the points, and 2 laps down by the end of the race. Ricciardo, Hülkenberg, Ericsson, Sainz and Perez would take the points. Will we suffer the same fate as the real-life Jenson Button here in Australia? Well, the one saving grace is this game doesn't seem to replicate the poor reliability of the Honda engine, but it does replicate the absolute lack of power in this PU. Practice has shown us we might be able to sneak into the top 10, which would be a nice change after the last couple of years, so let's aim for 10th place and try and get the season off to a good start.
To Melbourne, where qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix should be getting underway shortly. We'll soon learn the true performance of these cars out on track. What can we expect to see in the following session?
Well, I think we're all expecting the Mercedes power unit to be particularly strong this year, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them at the front. But I wouldn't discount Red Bull or Ferrari just yet. We know they have the talent and the resources to react to any problem, so although they may be playing catch-up, I would expect them to bring some major upgrades pretty early, maybe before we even get back to Europe.
Here we are then, the opening qualifying session of the 2015 season. Practice was alright. I forgot about the handling characteristics of this game. It just feels weird and a little heavy. But we did remind ourselves that we got Jeff back. I say back. We get Jeff for the first time as a race engineer in F1 2015, and everybody loves Jeff, right? but we did finish quite a way down the order. 15th, I think, in the end, so we might be able to squeeze our way into Q2 for the first time since 2013. Oh, no, 2012, actually, I think. But it might be a tough ask. Let's get out there, see what we can do. Let's take a look then at the fastest lap in Q1. Already ahead of Perez in the Force India as we complete the first lap of our session and we fling the car through turns 1 and 2. You can see that it's a little bit sketchy, but seems to somehow stick to the road as we head up towards turn number 3. Get nice and early on the brakes, take the apex really nicely, avoid the curbs just a little bit. Little hesitant through 4 and out wide through 5 there at Whiteford, but flinging it through 6. A little lift off just to make sure we settle the car down. But we're up already by about half a second in sector 1, and we use as much runoff as we can through that chicane there. Older layout of Melbourne, of course, so we're heading down to this chicane, which I always seem to run wide at. The car doesn't seem to want to comply, but we don't go too far off as we head into the 10-11 chicane. Car sounds okay at this point, but we're only marginally up at the end of sector 2. We take a fair amount of runoff and then take some grass on exit as well. Doesn't affect our time too badly. Car remaining at high pace. On the brakes, nice and early. Across the curve in both entry and exit, not too bad at all as we head into the penultimate few corners and into this tight left-hander. Again, not getting too over-eager on the throttle, having to just lift off a little bit through the final corner, but we open the DRS, gun it for the line. And should be a lap quick enough to put us into Q2.
That's the end of qualifying 1, and the big news in this session is that Fernando Alonso was knocked out. It could be a long day at the office for the driver tomorrow.
Crofty close captioned it there, but for the first time since I think 2012, we're into Q2, and what a way to do it. P6, just 0.8 of a second off Lewis Hamilton. We were top of the times for a large portion of that session. We were when we set our lap time. Down at the bottom end, though, as Crofty said, Fernando Alonso knocked out with the two-man Mauritius of Merry and Stevens, and Nico Hülkenberg in the Force India also dropping out. I think Felipe Nasr should get through, if I remember correctly. But yeah, Q2 for the first time in 2 seasons. What a way to open our account with McLaren. Let's see how that goes in the next part. The somewhat unfamiliar surroundings of Q2 then in the McLaren with Jenson Button. And it's been a while since we got this far, so it's quite nice to be here. It's 15 that are through, so Felipe Nasr was also knocked out. Marcus Ericsson, the last of the drivers to make it through, so it's 5 eliminated from this session. Times will likely get quicker here in Q2. Hopefully, though, we can nail down a decent lap time, maybe even squeeze through to Q3. Let's get out there and see what we can do. First time in Q2 then for a couple of seasons. Let's see what our fastest lap had to offer. And much like Q1, already doing okay ahead of Rosberg, but it takes lap 2 to really get it right. Much like the lap in Q1, throwing it through the first couple of corners and letting the rear get a little bit loose, which seems to be alright for this car. Little hesitant into turn 3, couple of bites at the cherry to get it turned in, but not too bad at all. Once again, having to lift off through 4, very wide through 5, but not wide enough for it to damage the lap. Looking good through the trees there as we cross the first time in line, 3.5 tenths up, and again a little wide through that chicane. But once again, not compromising our pace too much. Centre of the track and having to adjust ourselves as we head into the 10-11 chicane. 8-9 chicane, I think it is. Take the sausage curve a little bit, which keeps us actually well within track limits and well off the runoff. Heading down into 10 and 11, 1/10 of a second up, and we take a huge liberty through the second half. The game gives us a warning, but doesn't invalidate the lap, so push in. Felt like I was actually on at least the curve in, but again, taking a couple of bites of the cherry down that back straight. But car still feeling pretty good, grip still feeling pretty strong. As we run into the penultimate corner of the lap. Try and get on the throttle a little earlier. Car tries to run a bit wide and it does take a couple of bites of the cherry through the final corner having to lift off. But it's a good lap. Is it going to be enough to get us into Q3?
Daniel Ricciardo would have been wanting to get into the top 10 shootout in today's qualifying, but it looks like the performance just wasn't there today. He'll be hoping for an improvement now in tomorrow's race.
You're right there, Crofty, as we make it into Q3. And I genuinely believe, I think that's the first time in any season for Q3 since 2011, back in Japan. So it's been a long time coming, and we're in Q3 on merit, about a second and a half away from the Mercedes, as you'd expect. But the big news there, the two Red Bulls, both Ricciardo and Kvyat, drop out with Grosjean, Ericsson and Sergio Perez. We make it through. There's a Lotus in the top 10, both Toro Rossos in the top 10, and us, along with the Mercedes and the two Ferraris and the Williams. This is higher than I expected this car could even manage, even with how sometimes you can compete when you really shouldn't on these games, as we've seen in back 2010, 2011. But here we are, top 10. So let's head to the final part of qualifying for the first time in quite some time. Q3 then, for the first time since the second season of this series. And on debut with McLaren. Alonso knocked out in Q1, the Red Bulls knocked out in Q2, but here we are. It was, I think, 6th in Q2 and maybe 4th in Q1. So we're slipping backwards as the track is ramping up and the drivers are getting quicker. But the team only wanted 12th. And I didn't expect us realistically to get much higher than sort of 16th, 15th, 16th. So anything we do is now a bonus. Let's get out there and give ourselves a good starting position for the Grand Prix. Top 10 shootout for the first time in a number of seasons, and it takes us to our third lap to get a decent one. Through turn 1 and 2, we don't actually push it as hard as we have in the earlier sessions. Take a little bit of the grass on our way through, but as you can see, already up ahead of the likes of Vettel, so it's been a good qualifier. We get a little bit wide through 3. Car doesn't want to push the front end in, but at least we're not as wide through 5 as we have been in the last 2 sessions. Taking a little bit of grass through 6, but heading down towards the first time in line, over a tenth and a half up, and again a little wild through 7, but we're running okay at this point. Car feeling pretty good as we head down to 8 and 9. This chicane's been causing us problems all the way through, but that's probably the best we've done all the way through qualifying, keeping the car settled and planted through the middle. Down towards the 10-11 chicane. 0.3 of a second up exactly, and again, much like Q2, take an awful lot of curb, maybe take a bit too much of a liberty, but we're not ticked off for it, just giving a little warning. So we continue to push as we head down the back straight, very wide through there, taking a huge amount of grass on exit. Again, though, doesn't compromise our speed too much, keeping well away from the gravel there as we head towards the penultimate corner. Use the curb really nicely to rotate the car, means we can get on the power nice and early. Still have to lift off mid-corner through the final one, just to set the car straight, but we cross the line. Decent enough lap. It'll put us.
Felipe Massa has finished this qualifying session on top as the fastest driver. It means the Brazilian starts the race tomorrow on pole position.
They're going to be unstoppable in the race tomorrow. That's if they can stay 1-2 by the end of the first corner, as there are some fast starters behind them.
And quite the shock for the Bucks there. Shock for the Bucks. Upset in the cards, whatever. Felipe Massa takes pole for Williams ahead of Sebastian Vettel and Valtteri Bottas. Our defending champions, Mercedes, 4th and 5th, Hamilton Rosberg. We were 4th as the session drew to a close, and then it simulated the last couple of people out on track, Bottas and Vettel, jumping us in that time frame. We start P6 though. 3rd row of the grid. What a place to start on our McLaren debut ahead of Kimi Raikkonen, Max Verstappen, Pastor Maldonado and Carlos Sainz. And I didn't expect to get through Q1, let alone all the way through to Q3. Hopefully that's not the sign of things to come in terms of how qualifying sessions are going to go this season. I don't particularly want any season to be a cakewalk in comparative terms to where I should be in these cars. it is still legendary AI as well, so maybe just qualifying not so strong. The race we might find ourselves coming unstuck in traffic, but let's cross to the race and see if we can have a dream debut for the team from Woking.
Crowd are here and they're here in numbers for the first race of the season. Welcome to the Australian Grand Prix. It's Felipe Massa who's on pole for today's race after setting a blistering time yesterday. It really looks like the Williams team have something special with this year's car.
It's difficult to predict how a season can start for each of the teams, but as Felipe showed in qualifying, they certainly have the pace for this weekend. A Williams hasn't won here since 1996 with Damon Hill. How they would love to repeat that again today.
Lots of sunshine and beautifully still conditions here for today's race. The temperature on track is high, which will pose certain challenges for the teams.
Racing tyres are designed to have a specific window of operating temperature where they're at their best. If the temperature is outside of this, the tyre is not at its maximum potential.
Down on the grid then for the opening round of 2015 here in Australia. It's going to be a new thing. I think we'll see it a little bit in maybe a couple of the next few seasons before we get the opportunity to either be back in the Team HQ or similar in the much more modern games, I guess. The ones of the last few years. You've got a view of the grid there. Alonso down in 18th, Ricciardo 11th, Massa's on pole. We've got the two Mercedes, one next to us and one immediately in front of us, and Vettel up there as well, Raikkonen next to us. I've got no other way of showing you the grid, I don't think, at this point, so that's about as close as it's going to get to having a grid rundown again. Future games we will get a vocalised grid rundown, much more akin to the real world broadcasting. But back to this race, P6 was more than I expected for grid starting. That is not the sentence. It's much more than I expected from qualifying, and getting 6th on the grid is far and away surpassing, I think, anything McLaren did in this season. It's not going to be easy to maintain this place, and I don't think moving forward, unless there's some shenanigans into turn 1 or through the opening couple of laps, I don't think it's going to be a case of us doing what we did last season and the seasons before, and diving up the inside of loads of people at the start and racing off into the front. I think we're probably looking at slipping back a little bit as the race continues. I would like to score points in the opening round of this season, get a good foothold into 2015, because it's going to be a tough year, I think, with the pace of this car. P6 really does paper over the cracks as to how slow this car can be in race trim. So let's aim for P8. 8th place would be nice. A couple of points on the board to start the season. And at least we'd be following up our point score at the end of 2014 with a point score at the start of 2015. Which I don't think we've managed to do that in any season so far. End the season with points and then start the next with points as well. So it'd be a nice way to hopefully start a bit of a run as we get into the early part of 2015. But there's not really much more else to say. It's time to go racing in 2015. Let's get on with the Australian Grand Prix.
See if you can manage 3rd or better. Good luck.
The mistake from Jaff as the 5th red light goes out. Away we go in Australia. Raikkonen immediately to our outside, just nice and steady into turn 1, and we keep Kimi behind us. Everybody cleanly through turn 1 by the looks of it. The Williams are 1-2. Hamilton and Rosberg go side to side. This could end in tears. It's actually given me the opportunity to jump Rosberg. It's a 5th spot. Don't think that Mercedes is going to stay behind us for very long, though. Vettel goes chasing after the two Williams cars at the front. Rosberg up the inside, just appeared from nowhere. Guy like a bit of a dive on this game, and we'll just sit right there the entire time. I was going to say we'll end the first lap in 6th, just about as we cross the line. Raikkonen goes past us into 6th. Now we've got to try and find a way back past the Ferrari, and I'm not sure we will. Sitting in his slipstream there. We've got a decent gap back to Verstappen at least. That was a dive. Car all crossed up. Up and under Raikkonen, back into 6th. Move that was, I think. The Mercedes have already broken away from us. Raikkonen made to the outside, but he's ain't breaking himself, and he's gone straight off. Some breathing room. Opening lap and a half. Mercedes is side by side again up ahead. Raikkonen now back with us in the Ferrari.
Mercer is the race leader.
Still leading up front, and once again we'll
Don't forget,
try and spook Raikkonen into breaking himself at the end of the back straight. It doesn't work. We'll stay fairly close to the Ferrari. At least for now. I think we're going to pit there this lap. Daniel Ricciardo moves past Verstappen behind us. He's flying in the early stages.
Feeling quite a bit of tyre wear about now. Stay out as long as you're quick, but there's probably not much left in them.
Raikkonen is also in. Bottas getting held. We'll get a little held by Verstappen and coming in and Raikkonen leaving. Slip down basically to the back of the field. And everybody pitting in.
Right, we have 2 stops left in this strategy. We have 2 stops planned.
Sainz had gone in early. He's jumped his teammate now. So Sainz is ahead of Verstappen. Remained ahead of the Toro Rossos now. Vettel leading through the pit stop phase. Should hopefully pick up a few spots back here. Up to 14th. The guys in front of us, I'm sure, started on the primes rather than the options. To the man of Marussia's and maybe even Alonso. Another host of cars in. And Ricciardo leading. As he's managed to jump people on the ultimate strategy there. We'll be back into the top 10, just. Nando's in, Will Stevens about to go in as well.
If the situation changes, we'll let you know.
Ricardo may have come in as well. Stevens is dispatched, Alonso is dispatched. There's Daniel Ricciardo. He will just about get back out in front of the Australian.
You've moved into P7.
We're back into 7th, which is where we were before our pit stop. Red Bull starting to loom large in the mirrors here. Tough to defend against that. Especially when he gets DRS down the start finish straight. Should be an easy pass for the Renault powered car, and there he goes.
The pit window has opened.
Slightly alternate strategy to us. We'll send it back up the inside at 3. Doesn't quite work out.
Some slightly worn rubber at this point. Should still have a fair amount of grip left, but be mindful, it's going to start falling away. Toro Rosso gearing up for a pit stop. I'm not sure which driver yet.
We've got cars coming in. So does Hamilton and Kimi Räikkönen. They're both in already.
The pit window is closing this lap.
We're at the end of this lap, try and long it out just a little bit more. Yeah, they're the man behind us as more guys go in.
We've just dipped under the 30 kilo mark in terms of fuel. We have 30 kilos of fuel remaining.
We come then for our second stop of the race. In a kind of fairly solitary position as Massa is in. I'd assume Rosberg and Vettel have been in as well. That rolls on by. Hamilton will as well. Bottas 2. Räikkönen and Alonso.
Up to speed now. Let's get some heat into those
Here comes
tires.
Felipe Nasr. No, he's in the pits. Okay, still in the points. Alonso trying to long it out again, just a little more. Okay, Ricciardo has just been in. He will get out in front of us.
Temperatures are good.
He is in behind Nando now. So maybe Nando can hold him up a little bit.
Rosberg's just taken first place.
Rosberg now leads. That must have been an on-track overtake, you feel?
It looks like one of the Red Bulls are about to
Viat
pit.
is in, so we'll move back into 9th. Alonso's still out there. Assume not for much longer though. We've got now Ricciardo for company. The wily old Spaniard will do us a favour. The defence didn't last too long. Ricciardo has passed Alonso.
Situation. We're good for the time being, but you are going to start to notice the wear, so make sure it doesn't catch you out.
We're going to catch him pretty quickly, unless he heads in this time round. Does indeed head in this time around, so back into P8 we go.
We've burned off around 40% of fuel now, so that's 60% remaining.
Orton's been in as well, by the looks of it. We come then for what should be our final stop of this race. Hamilton has closed right up to us after his stop. Not going to matter. As we head in. Yeah, Hulkenberg, they'll jump us. Felipe Nasr might as well. Another stop after this one. I thought we'd be on our last one.
Once now, one stop left.
No. He's not going to last to the end of the race then. See what we put me on the primes there and then.
Someone's come off ahead of you. There's a yellow flag ahead.
Yellow flag. Seemingly leading. Hamilton going slowly maybe. Hamilton is off the road and then he drives into us.
Brake balance to the rear. This may stop your front tyres from locking.
I flick through the wrong thing. Nasr and Perez goes by. But Lewis Hamilton just drove right into us.
Right, 50% fuel remaining.
Yellow flag's still out. Who is that? Is that...
Fuel load remains.
Is Hamilton. What Hamilton was playing at. Felipe Nasr was in the pits as well. Have to knock it into Rich here and try and claw some time back.
You've taken P11.
Whereas Hulkenberg's Sainz all immediately in front of us. Sainz got an issue, I think he might have. Cut our way back into P10.
There's a couple of places ahead of you.
Wide again as we try and hunt down Hulkenberg.
We'll give you a penalty.
Colliding with Lewis Hamilton just cost us an opportunity of points, I wonder.
Car ahead. Now on the options.
At least we didn't get damage. I don't know what on earth Hamilton was thinking, but he's going to have a really bad start to his title defence. More yellow flags.
No overtaking through the caution zone.
Hulkenberg and Vettel.
You see the greens.
They let Hulk through.
Is now the race leader.
Vettel is without front wing or something. And just pushing him off the road. Back up to P9. Could have been much further ahead if I hadn't passed Hulk while the yellows were out. Got caught up behind Sebastian.
Pit window is open. The pit window is open.
I think Fernando's in. Hamilton behind has a time penalty for whatever has been transpiring up ahead. Fernando was far enough in front that we should be able to take our pit stop as normal. Fernando already gone. Just. A little delayed getting the car up. Hamilton is heading down the start-finish straight. Goes.
Look after these tyres now. We want to finish the race on this compound.
Looks like that we've got quite the gap to Verstappen, so might be alright. Scraping a point. Hulkenberg has come in. He'll get out well in front of us. Means Fernando, I think he's up in like P6. It's where we started. Fernando having a great race on the ultimate strategy. Will Stevens briefly there in 11th. Despite all of the shenanigans that have happened in this race so far, we are finally down to 19 in it. Will Stevens, the first person to retire in 2015. Briefly made it up to the highs of P11 and then that's it, race over. We're closing up to Carlos Sainz here to put a lap on the rookie in the Toro Rosso. I'll get caught up in another incident with the AI. Give him a wide berth. Get DRS off the Toro Rosso, so that's nice. Vettel now in P11.
You're losing time to Hulkenberg, around a second each lap.
Lost Hulk. I think we're far enough in front of Vettel to be comfortable in P10. Looks like Hamilton has made a late pit stop. So off strategy that he was, with all of his issues and offs. So he managed to get past the Mercedes, but a couple of laps to try and stay there. Means that in round one, if we can hold P9, we will have beaten our 2013 total already. We would have matched our best result from 14. There was a double points round where he scored Abu Dhabi, so we wouldn't be matching or beating the points. Then to our final lap of the first round of the season, and it's the last lap of the race, rather than finding ourselves a lap or so down. Started P6. Hamilton at the moment flying up to the back of us as Nico Rosberg takes the race win. It's always going to be tough to hold P6. We didn't make moves at the start. There were no major shenanigans off the line. Everybody through T1 cleanly. Lost a spot to Raikkonen. We got through our first pit stops and remained comfortably in our little P7 bubble. Ricciardo, who'd started much further back, got past us between the first and second stops. Didn't really have anything to fight him with, and we kind of again settled into a bit of a rhythm. Lewis Hamilton was quite a few spots ahead of us and got involved in something. Rejoined the track in quite the unsafe manner. Knocked us off the road. Cost us a bunch of time. No damage though, so we were able to continue. Sainz also got in some trouble. And we floated around P8, P9, but we crossed the line in P9.
And that's a win for Nico Rosberg at the Australian Grand Prix here in Melbourne. What a result for this German driver.
What a fantastic result for Nico. He'll be so happy to start the season on such a positive note.
After all that excitement, it's time for a lie down, I think. Thanks for joining us, and goodbye until the next race.
Thank you, Crofty. That was a victory for Nico Rosberg for the first round of the season, shattering the dreams of millions of Williams fans as Felipe Massa finished second. Kimi Raikkonen took third ahead of Bottas and Ricciardo. Fernando Alonso from 18th on the grid made his way up to P6 on an alternate strategy ahead of Daniel Kvyat, and only just ahead of Daniel Kvyat as well. Nico Hülkenberg took 8th from P17 on the grid. We slipped down to P9, but we take points on our debut for McLaren ahead of Hamilton and Vettel, both of whom got time penalties for some shenanigans. Max Verstappen down in 12th, then it's Nasser, Grosjean, Perez, Pastor Maldonado, Roberto Meri, Marcus Ericsson, 2 laps down, Carlos Sainz, 3 by the end of it. And Will Stevens disqualified in the end. We'll have a quick look at the race director to see what that's all about. I'm just going to check how people got everything. Severe collision with Button, that's me. Severe collision with me by Lewis Hamilton, got the 5 seconds for him. Lots of warnings. Severe collision with Nasser for Vettel, probably as he was struggling late on, or about midway through the race. He got 5 seconds for that. And parked in a dangerous location for Will Stevens. So I think he just broke down and that was it. What does that do to the championship? Well, drivers-wise, exactly the same as the race results. Rosberg leads the championship ahead of Massa, Raikkonen, Bottas, Ricciardo, Alonso, Kvyat, Hülkenberg. We're in 9th with 2 points on the board, 1 more than Lewis Hamilton, who finished 10th. And then it's those 0-point scorers: Vettel, Verstappen, Nasser, Grosjean, Perez, Maldonado, Meri, Ericsson, Sainz and Stevens. In the constructors, it will be a little different. Williams lead the way by 4 points ahead of Mercedes. Then it's a 10-point gap further back to Red Bull, who are just then a point ahead of Ferrari, 5 clear of us, McLaren in 5th, and then Force India have got 4 points and sits 6th. Toro Rosso 7th ahead of Lotus, Sauber, and Mana Marussia. And that was the first round of the 2015 season, and for the most part, a fairly solitary affair. Save for a really great qualifying, an okay first few laps, and then that incident with Hamilton, and then Vettel almost gaining us a place on Hulkenberg, but getting caught out by the yellow flags, whatever was going on with Carlos Sainz that cost a couple of other people a couple of spots as well that we also jumped in and took. It was a fairly chaotic end by the end of that one, but we come home with points on debut and the team are in double figures already. So that means constructors wise we've already beaten 2013 and 2014 in one very, very fell swoop. We are now only 2 points off our 2011 points total after just one round, at least in the constructors. In the drivers, we're already better off than 2013. Good start in the end then in Australia. Is it a sign of things to come? Who can be sure? I feel like this could be quite the tricky season. You saw the pace drop off pretty much as soon as we started the race. We'd managed to qualify well, and then we just sort of started going backwards. So I think we're going to be fighting for scraps unless there's some shenanigans. But thank you so much for watching the opening round of 2015. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Do all the good stuff. You know the drill by now. We move on to the next one in the McLaren Honda. Hopefully I'll see you there. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.